Well, hey there, you're on the internet, I have some free time, and welcome to the Triple N Network, where all you newbie nib nerds can find all the news you'll need. Let's look at an ink today, shall we? Now, today's ink, I have in sample form, DeAtramentis-Sherlock Holmes. Of course, named after the famous character, the detective, by Arthur Conan Doyle. Much beloved, many reincarnations, especially recently. And I'm about to start a fight on the YouTubes, but if I had to pick a side, yeah, I'm gonna go elementary. Not because I have anything against, Cumberbatch. I think he's fantastic. I just love Lucy Liu. And, I mean, come on. Moriarty on that show was so much cooler. Anyways, rambling. Moving on. All the tests were done in this JinHao X250 with sort of a very standard medium nib. Of course, the 250 comes with a number 5 nib, whereas the 450 and the 750 have a number 6 nib. Now, check out the chromatography. As you can see, there is sort of a bit of water resistance. It's sort of more gray down here. A lot of the blue gets pushed up. And here's the dried version, which admittedly is not how you're supposed to do this. But as you can see, it's much darker. There's a lot less to be pushed up. So, yeah. It really is a lovely, dark, rich shade of blue. Now, here's Sherlock Holmes down at the bottom. That I compare it to a few other dark blue. It does have a bit of a woolly texture because, as I've said in some other videos, DeAtramentis has this thing that I've just come to call DeAtramentis-Syndrome, which is the longer it's out of a vessel, whether it's sample vial or a bottle, the longer it's sort of like waiting in a pen, like the more the performance declines. And, it gets woolly, it tends to bleed, becomes problematic. So, anyways, here's DeAtramentis Sherlock Holmes. Here's Noodler's La Couleur Royale, Diamond Sapphire Blue, Sailor's Sweet Violet, or Nuai Sumeri, and Levenger's Cobalt Blue. Oh, I mean, look at that. Look at all that gorgeous sheen. I really like that ink. Anyways, top down in density, Clairefontaine 90 grams per square meter. Now, admittedly, as you can probably tell from the sample vial, there's not too much left in there. I did use a full converter of this, and it was very problematic, but I decided to give it a fresh refill before doing the test, and therefore, because it's a fresh refill, it is very well behaved. However, I give you my word that after more than 2.5 or 3 days in a pen, it has that decline. So, just something to keep in mind. It's not always this well behaved, but still, let's just get a good look at that. Not a lovely dark blue. It's not quite navy, it doesn't lean towards purple. It's very nice dark blue. It took 15 seconds to dry. As you can see, nice shading, right? It's lovely blue. Yeah, no bleed, no feather, no spread. Really not much echo, even though it's a dark blue, but this is a very dense paper. And as we saw in the chromatography, there is some potential for water resistance. What you can see at the center is still pretty there. If you had to, you could recover that. Did make a little bit of a mess of the page. Here's Rhodia, 80 grams per square meter. Here it took 12 seconds to dry. And here you can see some of that lovely shading. Very nice, very nice. I said, again, it's very well behaved because it's fresh. There's no bleed, feather, or spread. And it's a scrubby, so But again, fairly dense paper. There is a hint of micro sheen. I know I'm not going to be able to get it on camera, but it's like through here and a couple of places. It's a red metallic. It's very pretty. Again, like we saw in the chromatography, there is potential for resistance. What's at the center is sort of more of a gray. A lot of it did wash away, but a good bit remained. Next is Tomoe River, where you definitely get some beautiful shading. It's a lovely rich blue. 16 seconds to dry, and actually, as you might be able to see already on camera from the 1 in that 16, and definitely here in the scrubby. Granted, I tried to lay it on really thick on here so that I could make sure I got the sheen on camera, and I wore right through the paper, so when you're not being a complete idiot, you won't get bleed. But I am a complete idiot, so yeah, but I just wanted to make sure you could see that red sheen, because it is there. When you put it in a broader nib, On this paper, like a broader, wetter nib, on this paper you get beautiful red sheen, and it's all throughout the writing, even in this medium on a fresh fill. It's really nice. There's no bleed, no feather, no spread. There is some echo, because this is a pretty darn dark blue, and this is very thin paper. I mean, that's not going to come through on camera, but geez, it is so thin. If you haven't tried this stuff, just, I don't know, get a sample, go in with a friend. There's really nothing like this paper, and it will also, like some kind of Zen master, teach you patience. Yes. Anyways, as you can see, there is some water resistance, and Tomoe River loves to let ink slide away once you add more water. But if you had to, you could recover that. There is some left. I feel like if it were a wetter nib, even more would remain. So, now here's where we have some problems. This isn't the wettest flowing ink. This is sort of what I would call a 5 out of 10. Generally, you don't have to fight it. It just goes. Not overly wet, not overly dry. However, with paper this absorbent, I feel like you can definitely see it in the writing, it was reticent. It was having trouble coming out. Like, you see how that's much thinner. The downstrokes are wetter, but the across, like in the E, are drier. See? Like the A. The flow was having trouble keeping up. Now, because the paper's so absorbent, it did dry essentially instantly. You couldn't smear it. I feel like you also see here how it's almost like the absorbency of the paper has sort of robbed the ink of some of that interesting color, that vibrancy. It's almost gone flatter. But yeah, you can really see how it was struggling with the flow here. But again, because the paper is more absorbent, it's sort of sucked more of the ink in and made it harder to wash out. So there is more there. And it didn't feather and explode too much, except here at the edge. So that's really not bad. But this is the world's worst copier paper, and that was a medium nib, and you know, it was trying to suck the ink in, so there were problems. In fact, here, in these very dark spots that you can see, that's not only real bleed, but it made it onto the page that I was writing on. So it actually bled through, made it onto the page below. So maybe a step up from the world's worst copier paper would do better, particularly with maybe a fine nib or an extra fine. Next is Mead Notebook Paper, where it took 2 seconds to dry. Yeah. So there's very significant echo throughout, and it's true, but there is, I think I could call that bleed right here along the edge. So something to watch out for, but again, this is a medium nib, maybe fine or an extra fine. Might do a bit better. Again, I feel like the ink, like in color, was almost like robbed of some of that boldness. It seems to have gone a little flat. But yeah, there is some spread. The line width did get a bit broader, but there's really not much feathering. And usually this paper freaks out when you add water. As you can see, there's not a ton of exploding or feathering. Not too bad. You could recover that. Now lastly is Moleskine Notebook Paper, and this is modern, accurate Moleskine paper. This isn't that freakishly well-behaved stuff. The only caveat I have is that, again, this was a fresh fill. Maybe a slightly more aged version of this might not behave quite as well, but still, 6 seconds to dry. And even on here, we get a bit of that woolliness, like if you look at the texture. There definitely is some spread. There's definitely good potential for feathering. I mean, you kind of see it in some spots. It's almost bleeding over from woolly to feathering. As I say here, it could have been worse. Bleed was not as bad as expected, because this is awful paper and this is a medium nib. So it could have been just all over, but there are just spots, you know, a lot of times on downstrokes, as you might be able to see. But yeah. Water test. I mean, we've seen modern Moleskine paper just bleh, I mean, it just turns into a mess, but this is almost recoverable. On the scale of terrible, I'd say it's just straight terrible, not obscenely terrible. But yeah, feathered, it exploded, a lot of it washed away. Yeah, so there you go. DeAtramentis Sherlock Holmes. It's a lovely dark blue. Not super wet, so maybe put it in a wet pen. Does sheen. When it's fresh, it's well behaved. It's a very nice shade of blue. Totally dig the name. For your consideration from the Triple N Network. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you'd like to see more, please subscribe to the channel. Please don't hate me for liking Elementary. And if you'd like to vote on what inks you'd like me to review next before I leave, please go over to the video entitled Apology Announcement Invitation and let me know what you'd like to see next. Thanks for watching. Bye.